cut.
Okay, cut. Colin, what is wrong exactly?
The scene needs something.
No, I don't think it does.
Ula! What am I missing?
You need an obstacle. How about a cold?
A cold?
Detectives get sick.
Great. No, that'll be good. It won't be distracting at all.
There's a leak in the task force. We're gonna find him.
Well, you know, he doesn't really... I'm sorry, but do you have a cold?
Okay, cut. Steve, don't improv off of what he's doing.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Colin, thanks
Are you
so much
guys
for
like
being
just employees here on lunchtime? Is that what this is?
here. Something
Sorry,
like that.
just asking. What's that?
Something like that.
Oh, really?
Colin, I've seen you do stand-up a number of times, you know, and I've heard you talk about on a few occasions your longing to be in Law and Order, in a cop show. So when I started watching Cop Show, I was curious if the pitch for this show, however it started, really came from you being like, God damn it, I want to play a cop.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, I mean, it was my fury. It was actually my resentment against Law and Order. And then one day I was walking, because I was doing that routine for a couple of years. He probably saw it, you know. And didn't want to mix it up too much. But then I was walking by the Law and Order steps. And I was like, that's where Law and Order is shot. I should shoot something. And I was like, oh, I should do a whole show about it.
So how did it come to you? Because this is on essentially Lexus's sort of their content site where they have short films, they have stuff about musicians, they have a late night show, and they have a few scripted shows, and you being one of them.
Yeah, they're like the Medicis. I'm like Michelangelo. Folks, come on, that was not that funny, but it was kind of sophisticated. Get with it. I'm not playing with this crowd. Go ahead. People can get Starbucks tomorrow if you keep this up.
Did they come to you looking for a show, or were you brought to them with this idea?
Yeah, no, I brought it to a lot of people, and everybody told me to take it on the arches, as we used to say. And the only people that said yes was Lexus, with L Studios.
Good for Lexus.
Yeah, everybody else told me to take a hike. Yeah, L Studios, it was great.
And you have complete creative freedom over this and what
Yeah,
you're doing?
I mean, you have more than you would anywhere else. They just say, because they don't think they know. You know what I mean? They don't pretend to know. And like, people wouldn't like, it's like, oh, shut up. Just let me do my thing, you know?
And you have a lot of cameos. Steve Buscemi in the clip that we just saw, Danny Aiello in the last episode that I think was published. Who else do you have appearing in the show here and there?
Oh, Chris Rock. This season, Rock. Steve Buscemi. Next season, Seinfeld, Seth Meyers. Just a lot of, you know, I call in all the favors. I don't care. Bradley Cooper's girlfriend, Irina Shayk, the famous supermodel. You know her?
No, but
She's
I'm glad that she is prefaced by Bradley Cooper's girlfriend.
Cooper's girlfriend. I know. I'm sure she appreciates that. Not that I'm sexist, but anyway, I just figured I'd throw that in. If I said Irina Shayk, people would know who that was. But it's a big scene with me and her. You know, two like genetically unflawed people together. It's a wonderful scene. A lot of tension.
Now, the first episode of the show that I noticed is 10 minutes. Did you sort of start, and the last one that I saw was like 5. Do they change all the time, or did you realize that maybe 5 was better than 10? Are you still figuring out the model of the show? Because it's a different beast web series. It doesn't have to be 22. It can be whatever your audience is willing to stick around for.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's hard to say, but definitely you learn to be humble, because you're like, oh, we got to put all that in. It's all gold. Like, I write them long, and then we keep cutting, and you're like, that's better short. So, yeah, I would say 5 to 8 minutes is the most it should be, usually, you know.
Is there anything you can't get away with working with Lexus and doing this show? Is there anything that you've tried to do?
No, I mean, we curse. I mean, there's nothing, you know. I guess if we drove a Lexus, or if we just smashed a Lexus with baseball bats, they probably wouldn't like that. But, I mean, you know, they don't have a political leaning.
All crimes took place in Lexus.
In Lexus, yes. Well, the head of Lexus
There's been a murder in the Lexus.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was like the Jared of what Jared is to Subway, if I was that to Lexus, they'd probably be a problem. Come on, that was good. Anyway.
The whole show was just about that.
Jumping. Oh, yeah.
I know they're on their lunch break. I don't know what to tell you. It's not like...
I know. I'm working them now. See, that's how I do. I'm a real stand-up comic. You got to keep going to the crowd, try to work them.
The hardest audience for stand-up comics is a bunch of new media employees on lunch break, apparently.
On lunch,
yeah.
In the middle of the afternoon, when it's a beautiful day, and they could be walking around outside.
So when you started doing the show and you started calling in those favors, how does that work? How does it work to call in favors for a web series?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because, you know, what I do is I tell them, you give them like a date, and then you give them a date, another date, but they're not real dates that really matter. What you want them for is a third date. So after the second date, they've said no twice and said, oh, because I'm here and I'm here. And they know, because we all know each other in the business, like, you're not on the road those 3 weird Mondays. So then they're like, damn it. So you just kind of, you cut off the ring on them, as they say in boxing.
Basically, you have your friends' schedule in your back pocket, and you know how to
More or
kinda work
less.
it.
I do strategize, but they're pretty, it's nice when they say yes. A few people have said no, but, I don't even get that mad because I've said no to people. So it's like, I understand, even though it bugs me, but it doesn't bug me the way it would.
You create this show to play a cop, but then it turns out that you're playing you trying to play a cop and not really being able to do it well, not being that qualified as an actor to play a cop on one of these shows. When did that aspect of the story start happening? I mean, I imagine you started with, I want to play a cop, but then when did it become about you trying to play a cop?
Oh, no, it was always that. That was it from the beginning. Was like, yeah, I'll be a cop. Well, like my Law and Order bit, it's like, I'm acting, but I'm acting out the bad guy, the villain that I was never either. I didn't want to play a cop on Law and Order. I wanted to be like the villain.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like the bad guy, at the end they come into my terrarium or whatever, and I give the big metaphor speech,
What is that? I love that metaphor speech.
The metaphor speech is like, they catch me at the end, they find like clues of like plant life. So then at the end they realize this guy's like a florist, like, and then at the end they come to my house, I got my pruning shears and the gardening gloves, and I give the speech about the murder, but it's really about how he killed the girl, but it's about plants, where I'm like, have you ever seen lilacs bloom, detective? They're very delicate. They're rather like people. If you pay attention, they'll be nice to you. If you turn on them, they'll kill you. And then they handcuff me. And so that was my original plan for being on the cop show. And then when I did this cop show, I was like, I'll be the cop, because...
Do you become the villain, though, by becoming kind of the sort of more inept actor out of everybody and sort of causing the show to be harder for everybody around it?
Yes, but I mean, I definitely, my acting is abominable on the show. There's no denying it. How much of that is me playing a bad actor and how much of me just a bad actor? Well, that's for anyone to guess, not for me to speculate. But I mean, yeah.
How do you feel personally about your own acting chops?
I'm okay. I mean, I'm a comedian, you know what I mean? Like, I've studied acting enough over the years and been bad enough. The best acting, I studied with good acting teachers, so I finally started to understand how what I was doing that was so bad. I had this one acting teacher named Sandra Lee, and she's still around. And one day she imitated me. I did this scene, so it was a serious scene. And then she gets up. Here's how she critiques me. She gets up and goes, look, you're like this. And she starts mocking me in front of the class, like making a face, like, And that was one of the best. For me, that works. For other people, it probably traumatize them. And
you needed to be made fun of.
I needed her to mock me, and I was like, oh, that is pretty horrible. And then I was like, oh, I'll never do that again. Like I was mugging, just with my face, and the way she did it was really brutal. But it was, for me, it worked,
There's that great episode in an old episode of Louie where he's trying to be an actor and the director's trying to give him directions and they keep being like, your father died or something like that. And he's just like, can't get down with the pretending. He's like, it's so, you can tell that it's just killing him how pretentious it is to pretend like that. Did you ever find that as a comedian trying to become an actor? Because really becoming an actor is getting outside of yourself.
Sure.
And being a comedian is all about sort of being inside yourself and knowing sort of what makes you tick and what you want to talk about.
Right. But actor, comedian is intellectual, actor is emotional. You know what I mean? Like, so actors do have to get in touch with their feelings, and comedians, it's a verbal, it's more of like, it's not an emotional thing because you're dealing with, the crowd, and you have to be very tough to be a comedian.
Well,
like, I don't believe any comedian is not tough. I don't buy it. If anyone's like, oh, I'm scared, it's like, I don't buy it because you're dealing with crowds every night. You got to be tough in a certain way,
Well, it's a different way of dealing with your emotions as a comedian too, because sure, you're emotional and you know your emotions, but your trigger, or not necessarily your trigger, but your reaction to it all the time, your art is to be like, I'm emotional about that, how can I make fun of it? I'm emotional about that, how can I make a joke about it? Whereas an actor is like, I'm emotional about that, how can I cry for 35 minutes while they try to get this take?
Right. They're trying, like, our response is more like lashing out, which is funny because if you're in any comedy club or anywhere and the crowd's there and somebody starts attacking you, the crowd wants you to hit them back because it's sort of like cathartic for them because that's the guy at work they can't say that to, but you're allowed to because you're a comedian. You're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I realize I changed the subject in the middle of that, but
I have to ask. So you did Tough Crowd. You did update on SNL for a little while. So you're definitely you can be a topical comic when
Yes,
you want
I
to be a
can be
topical
when
comic.
called on to be.
When called on to be. Do you like doing topical comedy? I mean, especially right now in the midst of an election. Do you have stuff about the election that you're doing? Do you care to talk about it anymore?
I mean, no, I mean, I'll talk about it, but I mean, I don't have stuff right now only because I was just doing my other play, New York Story. I was doing a whole show about New York, so I don't get, you can't be, I can't do that and still be working on stand-up. But now I'll probably start doing stand-up on all what's going on just because it's, it's fun.
Yeah.
But it's also very, at this point, with so many media outlets and so much between, even Twitter alone, every joke you say, oh, I thought of a great Trump joke. You're like, oh yeah, like 8 people on Twitter said that, 4 late night shows said that. There's a whole thing goes on now where before you speak, 100 people might have said it.
Oh, and people are also in many ways trying to shame comedians a lot these days. They're saying that you're a joke thief, and people are really trying to.
Oh, like Amy, yeah.
What happened with Amy Schumer, where a few
Right.
comedians said, "Well, I said something like that before,"
Right.
and then blogs jumped. I mean, it seemed to me that like a couple comedians said, "Oh, that's similar to a joke I said," almost like not in an aggressive way, and a bunch of blogs took that as very aggressive, and like these comedians are saying Amy Schumer stole jokes.
Right. Well, they were, but I mean, I understand both sides of
The
it.
blogs were saying that. He wasn't saying she said that.
Oh, but I'm just saying, I understand both sides. I mean, I understand all these comedians, because if you're a comedian and somebody's doing well and you see a joke you had done, you're like, that's my joke.
Yeah.
But in this case, most of those jokes are very, like, a good example is the Patrice thing. Her and Patrice did this similar thing. That was the first thing that started it. And it's based on those Urban Dictionary, the Angry Pirate, all those sexual things, So it's like, no, neither one of them owns that. That's just Urban That's everybody here knows what it is. So their punchlines were different. If her punchlines were the same as his, then you'd say, yeah, she stole it. But the punchlines are totally different. They're like, oh, but it's in the same order. So what? They're the same, that Urban Dictionary, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. So I'm saying a lot of people that don't understand comedy would say that it was stolen. But
I think one of them, which I thought was so egregious to sort of really attack, was that Amy and a prior comedian had done this one bit that was almost word for word, but it was just a one-liner. It was essentially,
Right.
I always make the man pay for the first time
Right.
we have sex,
Yeah.
which is a great one-liner. But it's also
Great
like
one-liner.
that is a one-liner that people who are not even comedians could potentially come up with and do. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and it's Wendy Liebman, who's a great one-liner. She's like, she has like 50 of those. And she was the one that was like, hey, look, parallel thinking, I'm not going to say, you know what I mean? Because Amy, first of all, if Amy even did do it, she wouldn't be stupid enough to do it at the height of her fame on the special.
On her HBO special.
On her HBO special. She's not, you know what I mean? So if she was doing that, she wouldn't be, she wouldn't be doing it like that.
It's also, not to stick with this too much, but with someone like Amy, it's like, are you out of your mind? You found 2 things in an hour of incredible original material. Like,
That's the other
outrageously good original material.
Yes.
And you're going to say that she's a hack who steals from people because of these 1 or 2 small things you saw?
And like I said, half of them is just generic stuff, and none of them should be doing it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that I've read, I'm just like, as far as any of it, so it's like.
Well, you're at the Comedy Cellar on a pretty regular basis. How often do you find comedians, even just there as friends, get into it about that was my joke or I had done this first? Does that happen regularly?
Yeah, well,
or
it
often?
used to. I feel like it used to happen, but people would say that's my. When I was starting, we used to go. Guys would go, he's stealing my persona, because a lot of guys would do another guy's persona when they started, because they're like, oh, I like his attitude, so they do your gesture and your intonation. So that happened more than joke stealing, but it was different. Like now, because everything's recorded. Like even one of the Amy things, it was like a web show, and they were like, "That's similar." But first of all, she doesn't write all her sketches. But second of all, it was a web. Like it wasn't. It was
one was a joke and one was a sketch, and it was like, what?
right, and that one was ridiculous, and it was a common thing, which is a fixer up. And then another one was like a magician having sex. And then he pulls all these scarves out of, but either way.
Colin, out of what? I'm lost right now.
But either way, it was kind of like, we all know that, and then balloon animal condoms. I mean, these are old things. These are from I remember hearing that kind of stuff in the 80s. So now really I'm slamming Amy and her writers for doing that routine. But I mean, but also I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that are kind of out there. But
when you were first starting out, did you ever see anyone take your persona, or did you take on anyone else's
a lot
persona?
of people used to do my persona a lot. And they'll be the first to admit it. They used to do my persona, but then suddenly I was shoved aside, and everybody started doing Dave Attell, and people did Dave Attell's persona for a good 15 years, and then a lot of people also did Todd Barry's persona.
Oh wow!
Something about Todd Barry's persona that
It's a
people
very
like.
specific persona to try to take on.
Mine.
Yours and
Todd Barry,
Barry's,
yeah.
yes.
Todd Barry was very, but I saw a lot of people used to do Todd because he has a funny, kind of a like if you're sort of that way to begin, then he's fun. It's a funny thing,
It's like the most deadpan you could possibly be.
Yeah,
for
but still, like
delivering the
he's
jokes.
something about his confidence with it. I think attracted people, so people do their persona. Yeah.
You mentioned your play that just wrapped up.
Yeah.
How long were you running this play?
6 months.
And this was another play that was directed by Jerry Seinfeld,
By
right?
Jerry, yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like working with Jerry, and how many of these do you think you have in him that he'll do? Because this is the second of yours that you've written that he's done, right?
That's the question. How many is Jerry? We don't care how many I have left. How many does Jerry have left? Which is the only way to get him done. It's true. And
Written by Colin Quinn, directed by Jerry Seinfeld.
I know. Well, I just have to be like, geez, Jerry, I can't get the play up. I don't know. I mean, at this point, you think I'd have the juice. It's like, well, I could. I don't know. Would you put your name? You've done enough, Jerry. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I got a few more.
That's how you talk
I always
Jerry
have some
into it?
idea. That's me and Jerry
Yeah,
conversation.
that's how you talk him into it.
Yeah, you like the Jerry impression? I know, it was great. Settled down. Yeah, but I mean, who knows? I mean, I just keep doing that kind of stuff because stand up, as you know from the cellar, there's 10 people on, so sometimes you need to breathe and do your own. I mean, it's basically stand up, but in a theater, Mm-hmm. So it's like I like doing it that way because, at a certain age, you shouldn't just be. It's tough to be in those clubs, because people are. It's a drinking environment. You have to change the subject a lot to keep people's focus. It's different,
You have to really push on them. You have to really go,
Yeah, you
sometimes
have
as
to-
big and as hard as you can go.
A lot of lion taming sometimes, lion taming. I don't go for that.
I have to ask,
used to.
the last time that I was in, I think it was the Comedy Cellar, and I hate to admit it was longer ago than I would have liked it to have been. The stand-ups were very obsessed with being PC and the need to be PC,
Yes.
and the way people respond to it, and even what Jerry said about college campuses.
Right.
And I'll say, as a person, I love comedy. I love stand-up comedy. I devour it, But I still come from a place of like, kind of get over the PC thing. It's not that big of a deal. Some people are just asking you to be like a little bit more cognizant of like a place that they might be coming from. But I think comedians really feel.
Yes.
Much different about it.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way, or do you feel somewhere in between?
No, I feel like I understand why people would get offended by everything. I get it. Things offend me, but the whole point of comedy is who gets to decide what's offensive. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the big things, and it's like the collective. That's like saying, okay, so from now on, every writer. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a tough thing to say. It's like. People kind of, there's things that are, like everybody's offended by something, and and comedy's job is not to make sure that everybody's comfortable, because or else then you do have, because then everybody critiques like, oh, Jay Leno, he was just this populist guy, he never went out of his way to offend everybody. So it's like,
oh, that's not true. If we go back and watch some Jay Leno monologues from like 1996, I bet we're going to get pretty offended about some jokes he makes about Anna Nicole Smith or some other people. We'd probably watch him and be like, that's not a very nice thing to say about that woman,
a bad example. Ricky, I don't think you were going to call
no,
me out.
I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I just
I was
meant
just
like,
throwing him out because I was like, you could see me, if you look back at the tape, you'll see me struggling for a name of like a...
I
let's
just
say
meant
like,
that the boundary,
Right, I'm
the
just
line
saying that-
shapes.
comedy is
Who's
not,
next, Colin?
I'm just saying comedy is, if you want comedy to be, hey guys, everybody laughs at the same thing, I can't imagine what that would look like, but it's kind of like, it's not babysitting either. I mean, I'm not saying people should go out of their way just to make people walk out traumatized, obviously. You know what I mean? Like I said, there's things that offend me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm just saying that we can't leave it up to, outraged individuals in the audience to go on Twitter or go blogging about that guy said that, and I find it offensive, and then it becomes a mob movement against that person because it's context, and you're in a comedy club. I get offended by hair. I know all these people, and sometimes I'm like, that's offensive.
Yeah.
It makes me sick. But what am I going to do? I can't tell them, and they can't tell me because who knows? Maybe I say something that offends them.
I mean, you wouldn't say that that's offensive. You would be like, I didn't think that joke didn't really work.
No, I think it was offensive. I get offended by things, yeah. Like anybody else. I'm like, oh, it's in bad taste.
So
You
do
know
you
what I mean?
think? Do you think in many ways, like the problem with, and I hate to generalize, the problem with maybe outrage culture or quote unquote PC culture is that in many ways it's those who don't understand the sort of the process at which a certain art is created are offended by it, be it comedy, be it movies. Because so much of what you're saying is like when you're in the comedy club or when you're creating comedy.
Sure.
And I think people who make movies would say that as well. Like even the Coen brothers said recently, it's not our job to write a diverse story. It's the job of the industry to have a diversity of stories being written by a diversity of people. And the same thing could be said of comedy. Comedy should be a sort of inclusive, diverse place, but it's not the job of the one lone comedian who's developing his material to make sure that he's appealing to everybody and not offending anybody.
Right. Well, better put, I almost wish I could have written that down so I could start using it and say it's mine.
It's on tape.
I know. I'd like to, I couldn't even repeat it right now, but yes. Basically, comedy, if you go to any comedy club, you're going to see black, white, and all these different people, and they're all coming from a different place of their life experience, and they're saying what they believe. So they can't then try to co-opt the other person's feeling, and everybody has a uniformity of thought. Even though mine stinks compared to his, uniformity of thought was good, and you know it. Now look, that was an intelligent phrase.
I like that phrase, yeah.
I just want to sit on that one for a minute, but yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's how it goes at comedy club. You're watching this person's particular mind, their particular prejudices. Everybody's got their things. So would you rather have somebody being up there who's phony, who might feel prejudice or some feelings, and they're just pretending to not be like that? I hate that kind of comedy. I've seen it, where they pass smiling, but like, hey, I'm just joking. Or somebody who's saying, hey, this is how I really feel, but I'm trying to be funny about it. I'd rather see that, That's what I like.
But then the question is, how do we parse out something like, and maybe we don't have to parse it out at all, but something like Larry the Cable Guy or something that in my mind, I watch and it's like, maybe sure, I should just deal with being personally offended and get on with it, but it doesn't seem to be trying to illuminate any of that person's prejudices or discuss them or figure them out. It seems to be trying to pander and play into a certain audience's prejudices so that they feel comfortable with those possible prejudice leanings.
Right. But once again, I could point out any comedian, not Larry the Cable, I could point out any comedian and show you, well, that kind of seems to be pandering towards this particular audience just because it's the hillbillies or whatever. It's like, oh, yeah, but everybody's got their thing, and every comedian has their opinion. So whatever they're saying. So I'm saying that, it's very subjective,
It's the same kind of pandering if a comedian gets on stage and starts blasting Trump and voters.
Right.
and like that, yeah.
So I'm just saying it's all just subjective stuff, and just because, like I said, unless it's actions, I feel like the whole job of a comedian is words. So for us, like anybody else, I'm like, we're immune. Everybody else, fine. We're off limits, But now everybody's going after us. We're like, hey, wait a minute, what is this? But the whole point is we're supposed to be talking. We're supposed to use words constantly, so we can't have our words overly scrutinized. And then we're also supposed to be, I hate to use the term transgressive.
No,
I know,
think
but
it's an appropriate term.
I know, but I should be reading transgressive, not saying it. But because transgressive in itself is also one of those that we could argue about that for 20 minutes. But I'm just saying that, so when people are like, whoa, that's too far, it's like, I understand you feel that way, but you're not, first of all, you're not in the comedy bit. It's like me, I always say it's like me watching, I'm watching the Warriors and the Knicks the other night. See, the Knicks, if they collapsed off Steph Curry, it's like, I have an opinion, but who cares? I don't know.
Who the hell cares? Yeah, you're not a coach.
Just another person's opinion, so I can't be like, now I want Steph Curry yanked out of the game. I demand him yanked out. He's not doing what he's supposed to. You know what I mean?
We've given a certain allowance to random yahoos to suddenly have like
Yeah,
the critical
that's-
faculties
exactly.
over the actual art form.
And because they're articulate or they know how to, verbalize, yeah. So it's like, you're still an audience member. You're not funny. You're not a comedian. You know what I mean? Not that you don't have an opinion. I have an opinion on the Knicks. Sometimes I might be right about what I say about the Knicks, but it's still
No one gives a shit.
I'm still an amateur compared to what they're doing. Yeah. They could explain to me, here, dummy, we figured that out in the first week of practice, why we do that. Do you understand now? And they're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Yes, you didn't think of that. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that, too.
I think we have some time for audience questions. First question is right here.
Hi, I saw you in Trainwreck and I thought you were great, and I was just wondering, because your character was so dramatic or serious, was that difficult for you? Like, what was the process to get into that character? I also have a second question. I know you're friends with Amy Schumer, and I'm sure you're aware that she screenshots your conversations and then puts them on Instagram.
Yes, very rude she is.
What's your reaction after that? Because I'm always so curious as to what you would say when she's like, please lose my number.
Yeah, she said, please, I wish I never met you. Lose my number. The worst regret of my life. Well, the first thing is what happened with the Amy Schumer movie. Once again, Amy, as you'll see in, like the screenshots, she literally bullied me into being in the movie because I was like, I'm too young to play your father. I know I look great. But she goes, no, you're not. And I was like, oh, brother. So she forced me to be in the movie, and I'm not kidding. I literally tried to get out of it. She'll tell you. And
why did you try to get out of it?
because I didn't want to play a guy in a nursing home. I thought I was too young and vibrant. Anyway. So she basically brought me in. She goes, because we did the reading, and then the reading, she starts crying during the reading. I was like, oh, brother, now she's going to want me to be in it. So I told her, Judd was directing. She gets Judd to direct. She goes, I'd like you to come in for the screen test. Believe it or not, they're still doing screen tests, like it's 1940. So I show up, and I try to pull, because I heard Judd felt I was too young, too. So I pulled Judd aside, but it's like, Amy's right there, so I have to say it quickly. I go, Judd, I get, like, that, you don't want me for the... And he thought I was like trying to say, hey, I want this role, so I get that you don't want me, but I'm really going to give it my all. I was trying to say the opposite. He goes, no, like he's like, no, I think you could be great at this. I was like, no, but Amy's right there, so I'm too scared to keep the conversation going. So I'm like, no, it's cool. So I go to the screen test, and as you'll all realize, one of the great things in life, when you don't want something and you really don't care at all, so I'm just sitting there reading, don't care, it totally makes you, you know what I mean? Like
You're comfortable. It makes
like
sense.
if you like somebody and they, if you're somebody that you don't likes you, same thing. You're just people just like, this guy's great because I don't care. I literally didn't want it. Next thing you know, I'm on the set, and but then when I met,
were you surprised that Amy wanted you for this role? I mean,
Yes.
once you get Judd Apatow to direct, she could have gotten like Christopher Plummer or some sort of like.
she could have got She could have got the greatest. Christopher Plummer's 93, by the way. She could have got.
Sorry.
The oldest
You were
living
just
actor.
the
He's 93. So Chris, but she could have got any great actor.
Thank you.
And Chris Plummer, one of the greatest actors of all time, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad you brought him up because he is a great actor.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I was horrified too because I was like, I'm a comedian, but I can act a little, but I'm not some amazing actor. But then so I took it once I realized she's forcing me to do this part, and she's and she's very willful, Amy. She just looks at you like this. I don't understand why you're being like, and I was like, all right. So then she made me we go to visit her father. And then once I met her father, is in a nursing home. And he's young, he's 62, which is young to a guy like me. But when I visited him, I was like, all right. So then I went back on my own and just talking to him, I started to like get his vibe. And that's the only reason that I was okay in that movie was because I visited the father. But that's how she is, that she would trust a non-actor, dumb comedian with the part of this important, in her life, one of the most important figures, her mother and her father, to trust me and to see that I could do this when,
Did you have any kind of, I'm sure that you had a friendship with her from the
Yeah,
comedy side.
the friendship
But did any way that she had you meet her father, did you feel like he was similar to you? Or maybe she even saw you as some sort of figure in the cellar beforehand?
Yes, I figured both of those. I figured
Did you
there's
ever
something
ask-
about him
Did you
that
ever talk to
reminded
her about that?
No. But I just assumed that's what it was because someday I'll talk to her about it. But at the time I was just like, I didn't want to mess up the portrayal of her father and her thing. Like it's important. It's her life, So I was just trying to be like, But when I met him the second time, that's what really brought him into me. Like when I went by myself and just met him and brought him, then I could really play him because now I felt like him, or I understood his life from his point of view, just me and him talking. You know what I mean? And it was like something about, and they always say that with actors, like you have to research, and when you don't, with the writers too, you know, if you don't get it, didn't do enough research. So that was all it was. It was just that, and then on the set, Judd lets you play, and Amy loves to play. So it was like a lot of, you know, screwing around on film that was really helps, you know.
And what about the Instagram posts that she asked about?
Yeah, the Instagram posts are a slap in the face, you know, obviously of all good people. She just, you know, I just post positive things to her, tell her, don't trust the people around you. They'll stab you in the back. I'm mostly talking about J-Law right now, probably.
Around who?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, yeah,
and,
J-Law, yeah.
You know, I don't like their friendship, and I don't think most people do. We don't. You know,
What don't you like about their friendship?
It just bugs me. I can't really articulate why yet, Ricky, but just something about them parading around, having their drinks, cackling over some nonsense. It just bugs me. It's hard to explain why, but I think it annoys a lot of good people.
Social media team, are we tweeting this at Amy right now? Just to make, no, I'm just kidding. Colin's like,
Give it to her. Fine.
next question from the audience.
Hey, Colin. I enjoyed your comedy specials, especially the one on Netflix last year.
Oh, thanks.
Did HBO or Netflix approach you for those comedy specials, or did you, approach them?
I don't have approach or, yeah. I mean, the HBO said yes to the first one, maybe because I had Jerry directing it. Might have helped. So HBO came because Jerry was like directing it. And then the second one, Jerry wasn't directing it. I kind of had this other director, and it wasn't Jerry, but that's why I had to go on Netflix. And it wasn't even bought, it wasn't acquired by Netflix. Like, Netflix has the ones they acquire. This was more like, you know, throw it up there. But it did good on there, you know. But I was definitely happy. But no, they don't approach me. I'm not that guy that they approach. I have to go to them. I hope I didn't sound as resentful as I feel during that answer. I hope I hit
Colin,
it well.
Cop Show is, it's on YouTube. It's also on the Lexus Network, right? How can people watch
L
Cop Show?
Studios.
L Studio, excuse me. Is that how people can see it?
L Studios. Yeah, but it's the Lexus, yeah.
Lstudio.com?
They should call it the Lexus Network.
Why not?
Yeah, it sounds a little like softcore erotica. The Lexus Network, ooh.
But that's how people can see the show, lstudio.com? The show is really funny. There's amazing cameos. Colin finally gets to play a cop in it, kind of,
Yes.
which is really nice if you've seen him do his routine about Law and Order.
Vengeance.
Colin, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks,
It's always a
Ricky.
pleasure
Thank
talking
you
to
guys
you.
for coming.